I'm learning some new songs. Thanks to the guitarists and soloists, and I've enjoyed meeting a number of you and hearing your stories. Some of your stories are very encouraging. Already the first day, I'm kind of blown away with how God is working in a lot of your lives. And it's always a treat for me to come to Joshua, and I always walk away blessed. And I want you to know, by the way, Dallas sent me, I asked him to send me a picture and name for each one of you. So I've seen all of your pictures and names a couple of weeks ago because my wife started me in the habit of praying for you before I actually meet you. Whenever we would come out, my wife and I, her special gift was prayer. And so she prayed for all of you. And I kind of pick up the ball now. And so I recognize a lot of your faces, and I've been praying for you for the past 2 weeks. And it's kind of neat to put a real person with that picture. And I really looking forward to finding out more of your stories, which are always so encouraging. Kind of my role that I see here over the next 2 weeks is to take the Bible and to make it look like a strange book. Okay. What I mean by that is that it's very easy to be going to church on a regular basis, to have grown up in a Christian family, and to get used to the fact that this book has part of the last part of it has stories about Jesus. There are a couple letters from a guy named Paul, and you've probably read these many times. Some of you, maybe you've never read them before. It has a first part called the Old Testament, and it has stories about Israel and prophets. And it's a normal book that you can find in a library, and maybe you've got a couple in your house. But I want it to become a strange book for you. What do I mean by strange? Well, it was written, some parts of it, 3,000 years ago, in a place that is half the world away, in languages that you don't speak, with customs that you're not used to. For example, and some of you may know some of these examples, how many of you know somebody in your circle of friends where there's a couple that gets married and they're having a wonderful life, and suddenly the husband dies and there's no children? So the guy that died, his brother comes along and marries her. Has anybody had that happen in your experience? That's normal in the Old Testament. You knew that. What's it called? Do you know what it's called? What kind of marriage? It's called a levirate marriage. Okay. How many would like that kind of a marriage? Okay, you have to think about that for a while. Okay. The point is that strange? Yeah, that's strange. Let's be honest. Okay. And there are all kinds of things in this book that some of us are committed to and we will give our lives for. But there's some things in there that should shock us. And that's kind of what I want to do for the next 2 weeks. So I want to say, hey, do you know what you see? Most of us, we see what we know. You know, we read the Bible and we see what we know. Okay. I want you to ask the question, do I know what I see? Do I know what I'm looking at? Okay. And so I'd like to do a little bit of an experiment tonight and have you turn in your Bibles to Genesis chapter 1. This is a text we're all familiar with, and this text should shock us. It's a strange text that we've become so acclimated to that we think we know this. And maybe some of you have memorized this. But in Genesis chapter 1, I would really appreciate it if somebody would begin reading in Genesis chapter 1, verse 1. If you got it. And by the way, if you would not mind saying your name as you read it, that would help me reinforce. Maddie, thank you. So read verse 1 until I tell you to stop.
Every day God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was without form and void, and darkness was over the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God hovering over the face of the water. And God said, "Let there be light," and there is light. And God saw that the light was good, and God separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening, and there was morning, the first day. And God said, Let there be an expanse in the midst of the water, and let us separate the water from the water. And God made the expanse, and separated the waters that were under the expanse, and the waters that were above the expanse. And it was so. And God called the expanse heaven. And there was evening, and there was morning, the second day.
Very good, Maddie. Thank you. So, by the way, you're doing Genesis now. Have you looked at Genesis 1 in your theology class? Oh, no, maybe I shouldn't do this. I mean, you already know about this. Genesis 1, right? So let me ask you. So when God makes something, how does he do it? I'm asking Maddie here. Yeah. He says what? Let there be. And then what? What does he do to it? Does he just leave it alone? He says what? He says it's good, very good. And for that particular object that he made, what does he say about it? Anybody help Maddie out? I'm putting you on the spot, and I apologize. Your name again? Alethea. Alethea. Does he do that? And what does he say? And then he says it's good. He calls the light what? Day, and he calls the dark night. Okay, he goes through and names these things, doesn't he? Okay. And as you go through the entire chapter of Genesis, he does this repeatedly. Let there be, right? Let there be. Sounds like a Beatles song. Dates me. Um, he goes through and he labels things after he creates it. Let it be, and then he names it. Okay. But if you ever notice, there's one thing in Genesis he doesn't make. What is it? He doesn't make the water. Okay. He doesn't make the water. Have you ever noticed that? It's already there. He doesn't say, let there be a deep. Let there be a deep. Does he give the deep a name? What does he call the deep? What's that? Oh, no, he doesn't call the deep sea. Could you read Luke? Go back and read if you would. This is a great example of let's make sure we know what we see. Luke, if you could read for me in um, start with verse 6. And God said, let there be an expanse between the waters, separating water from water. Okay, so here's all of this deep, right? It's made out of what? Water. And so he's now going to do what to the waters? Yeah, he's going to split them, right? Split them in two. And there's going to be waters where? And waters below. Okay, now the waters above, he calls what? Sky or heaven. Okay. Waters below, he calls. Did he ever give the deep a name before he split it? No, he didn't. The deep is already there and it doesn't have a name. It's something different. Now, that should be really strange. Why? Because when an ancient Israelite read these opening verses, they would do something that I saw none of you do. They would do this. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. Shivers up your spine. The deep shivers up your spine. I didn't see any of you panic when the word deep was read, but every Israelite would do so. Let me ask you this. So when you read the Bible as a Christian, who is the primary enemy of God and humanity? Somebody said, okay, we got a sleeper over here. It's Ricky? That's okay. You get one by. You get one by. You get one by. Okay. So somebody who did not say Jesus said what? Satan. Wrong answer. Who is the primary enemy of humanity in the Bible? You- What? That's a really intelligent guess. That is an interesting answer. What were you going to say? Oh, okay. See you on the same wave. Okay. Yes. The serpent. And you have good reason because he's in the garden, right? That's really good, but it's really interesting. What I'm trying to point out now is how we have read the Bible and we haven't picked up on what is the single most powerful enemy of humanity. That's really good. And that's powerful, but it's not the. I mean, before we existed, was there hostility toward God? Darkness, she said? Unbelief. How about if it refuse from you humiliating yourselves any further? What's that? All right. He did this by default because what did he do? He was reading Genesis 1, right? And you read Genesis 1, the one thing that is not created and that every Israelite would have their spines tingle to is the deep, the sea. By the way, if you think about Satan, somebody said Satan or the devil, right? Okay. If you go back and read in the Old Testament, you know how many times the devil is even mentioned? Maybe 2 or 3 times. She's not there. She's not there. Prove me wrong, okay? He's just not there. Um, but the sea as an enemy to God is everywhere. We see it here in Genesis 1. What does God do to the sea? He splits it in half, cuts it in half. Upper part, we'll call that heaven. Lower part, we'll call that seas. Wait a minute. Do you mean to tell me that when I look up in the sky, I see a bunch of water? Do you see a bunch of water? No, the rain comes from up above. But, it's like, whoa, there is a bigger reality than what our telescopes pick up. There's a bigger reality. When you talk to scientists, they will talk about the physical world. And many scientists are atheists, and they think that's all there is. There is a spiritual realm that is just as real. In fact, probably more real. We'll talk a little bit about that. But for now, I want us to see that the sea, Luke, you're right on target. The sea is the single most powerful enemy of God in the Bible, from Genesis to Revelation. How many of you read Lord of the Rings? Lord of the Rings? Okay. N- uh, n- so only about half of you, is that right? How many of you have seen the movies? Oh, okay, okay. Seen the movies. Well, who in the Lord of the Rings is the most powerful enemy? It's not. The most powerful enemy is mentioned even in the movies, but you have to know who it is. If you read the books, who is it? It's not Sauron. Sauron is like a lieutenant. He's like a lower class. Morgoth. Yeah, in fact, remember the elf at one point says, it was a Balrog of Morgoth. And boy, at that point, your spine and my spine did what? Morgoth. That's a thing I do. So Morgoth is the power behind Sauron. And that's the way it is in the Bible. The devil, Satan, he's like a lieutenant. And the power behind Satan is what is described in the Bible as being the sea. Let me give you an example. So do me a favor, um, and turn to Exodus chapter 14. Exodus chapter 14. In Exodus chapter 14, you recall the Israelites in the book of Exodus are slaves in what country? Egypt. And the 10 plagues come along and the Israelites leave Egypt. And when they leave Egypt, it's safe passage to the promised land, right? No, no, no. What's the obstacle? The red what? The red what? Have you ever connected Genesis 1 with the Exodus? It's one and the same thing. The Israelites are leaving Egypt, and Pharaoh is following them. He wants to kill them, and they are stopped by the Red Sea. It is not an accident. As the Israelites are leaving Egypt, they are confronted by the same thing that confronted God at creation. What does God do to the sea in Genesis 1? He splits it. What does God do to the Red Sea when the Israelites need to escape? He splits it. And by the way, Genesis 1, go back and read this later. Genesis 1, when God split the deep into the heavens above and the earth beneath, what appeared? The dry land. When God split the Red Sea, it's the same word. What appeared? The dry land. And the Israelites were allowed to go through life. Life became possible in Exodus 15 in the same way that the dry land appeared when God split the sea. Dry land appeared. And what can happen on dry land? Life, plants, wild animals. Exodus 15 is a replay. Um, in fact, and there's there's so many cool things. Like if you take a look at in Genesis 1, do you remember we're told that what is hovering over the face of the deep? The spirit what? The spirit of God. The word for spirit, we'll learn a little Hebrew here, okay? Ready? Ruach. Maybe you know this already. Ruach. Yeah. Practice for spitting that toothpaste out. Ruach. Yeah. Okay, great. Get a towel for the back of your neck from these people behind you. R-U-A-H. R-U-A-H. Ruach. Say it. Now, Ruach means, and by the way, you could go to the streets of Jerusalem today and you could ask the average Israeli walking down the street, what's Ruach? And they will tell you one of two things, probably both. They will say Ruach means wind. And you say, is that the only thing it means? And they'll say, it means spirit. Well, it just so happens in Hebrew and the same thing in Greek. One word has both the meaning wind and spirit. So when we hear in Genesis 1, what is it that in Genesis 1 is hovering over the face of the deep? Ruach. So is it the spirit of God or the wind? Which is it? It's both. Okay. It's the Ruach of God. Now turn to in Exodus 14. You're there, right? In Exodus 14, take a look. How did God split the sea? Take a look in Exodus 14. Maybe somebody who hasn't read yet could read for me. Beginning of verse 26. Oh no, not 26. I'm sorry, it's too late. 21. Thank you. Wait, he stretched his hand out over what? The sea. I want to make sure we catch that. Go ahead. Oh, east what? Well, that's the same thing. This is no accident. And every Israelite that reads this passage, they think, Genesis 1, what's God doing in the real time of history? He's doing with Israel what he did at creation. It's a replay. By the way, if you read these two passages side by side, the similarities will just pop out. Life becomes possible. That Red Sea is going to bring death to the Israelites unless there's dry land. By the way, remember when the Israelites wander in the wilderness for 40 years and they come to the Jordan River? What's preventing their access? Water once again. And in ancient Israel, we'll see in a moment too, the rivers flow where? Into the sea. And they're pictured as being that same hostile element. What does Joshua have to do? Splits again. And they cross over and to dry land. Now, this becomes such an important element for an ancient Israelite, and it's still true today. If you travel in the Middle East, um, actually, I mean, I was going to say on the West Bank, if you are in an Arab context, not so much Hebrew. Hebrew don't do this. Israelis don't do this. But on the West Bank in Israel, if you travel on the West Bank, you will find houses that are built by the local Arab population, the Palestinians. will always have around the around their windows, the same color painted around the window. No matter what color the house is, it could be a blue house, a red house, a yellow house, brown house, whatever it is, the same colors are painted around their windows. Blue or green, blue or green. And you can ask a Palestinian. And by the way, I haven't been able to do this recently. This was some time ago. I can't travel. We can't travel on the West Bank freely anymore. So I'm talking about this is back in the 70s when you could travel. An Israeli could travel on the West Bank, no problem. They were very, very friendly. That's changed. But back then, when I asked, oh, that's to keep evil out. We paint our doors and our windows with green or blue around the windows to keep evil out. You ask them, what's the source of the evil? They can't tell you. But I think you can probably take a guess. Want to take a guess? What's that? This is why it's blue or green. It's the evil of the sea. And you go, wait a minute, what's your name? Beth? Yeah. So Beth is telling me, oh, that's crazy. Well, why would these people paint blue and green around their windows? These are Muslims. Okay, why do they do this? But there are traditions that go back thousands of years in the Middle East. And sometimes they forget why they do what they do. So, I don't have a whiteboard up here, do I by chance? I should have asked and I apologize. Um, we are very fortunate to have another religion apart from the Bible, their texts also, some of their holy books that are like 3,000 years old. Uh, and in the 1930s, there was a farmer who was plowing his field. This is what's great about the Middle East. No matter where you go, you find old stuff 6 inches under the dirt. If you ever travel to Israel, always keep your eye on the ground. It's amazing. All the good stuff are found by tourists. So this farmer was plowing his field and chink, his plow hit something. It was about 1927. And he discovered that this was a stone that was 3,000 years old. Called in the archaeologists. The archaeologists bought his farm. They paid him. He moved elsewhere. He uncovered a civilization which had as their chief god a god by the name of Baal. Maybe you've been reading some of that about. I know some of you talk Baal. Who is Baal? Have you learned about who's Baal? Or how do you pronounce it? Baal? Baal. Tell me about Baal. Anything you've learned about Baal in the past week or so? Pagan god, that's right. What else? That's right. Elijah had to confront the priests of Baal on the mountain. What kind of a god was he? Very good. This city, it was the city of Ugarit. It was like a chief city of the Canaanites. Baal was a storm god, which means he was the one that brought the rain. Okay. Baal. And also in this Canaanite religion, there was a god by the name of Asherah. Anybody know about, any of you heard of Asherah? Okay, starting to read about that? Okay. Asherah, she's a mother goddess. The chief god of the pantheon is El. El. What's the name of God in Arabic? Allah. El. In Babylonian, El. Okay. See, these names are all related. Okay. Hebrew, Elohim. Elohim. Okay. These names are all related. But what I want to point out is that in Canaanite, you have the god Baal. Should I just hold this up here? Oh, and I apologize for not. I didn't even look. Would you mind holding that, Jen? Oh, okay, right. Thanks. It's here for Jen, master of all trades. So we have the chief god El. His wife is Asherah, and Baal is like a lower god from El. Baal brings the rain. Okay, he brings the rain, and his kind of sister wife is Anat. That's his sister wife. Now, the reason I'm bringing these up for you, that's another strange thing. Another thing that the reason I'm bringing this up is that who is the bad guy in this pantheon of gods in the Canaanite religion found at this city? Yeah. So we have this is the bad guy. Yum. Let's all say it together. Yum. And this is what you can say after dinner tomorrow. You say what? Yum, yum, yum. Got it? Yum, yum. If it's a good dinner, you say yum, yum, yum. Okay? Yam is the bad guy. You know what yam means? And by its way, it's a good word in Hebrew, and it occurs in Genesis 1. You want to take a guess what it means? See. Luke, you're on a roll. See. Yam. Genesis 1? Yam. And what's kind of cool about the Canaanite religion here is that when Baal fights Yam, the way that he defeats Yam is he drinks him. By the way, that shows you how big the gods are. They're not like you and me. Thank you very much, Jim. That's perfect. So my point is this. When you ask a Palestinian today about that red and green around, or the blue and green around their house, and they don't know why, but they just know it's evil. Okay? We have this connection throughout the Middle East. The sea, not just in Israel, but everywhere. It's a manifestation of the most powerful manifestation of death and evil. How many of you live on the coast of California? I mean, really on the coast. You have a house like on the beach. 5 minutes away? Okay, so your name? Mia? So, Mia, have you ever been down to the coast when there's a storm on the beach? Have you ever gone down and watched? Kind of. And how do the waves behave? Kind of crazy. Is it good surfing? You know? No, it's serious stuff. And by the way, I think a couple years ago there was a case where some of the waves were actually causing some mansions to collapse. Right? Recently here in California. And that's what ancient Israelites saw. They saw the sea in a storm clawing away at the land. And it wants to overpower. It invades the land and it takes away what's there. And then by the way, how many of you could last a week drinking only seawater? Why are you shaking your head? And what happens? You die. You die. Yam is a perfect picture of death. It's everything that's the antithesis of life. It's manifested in the sea. And when in Israel I looked at the sea, they saw this as a bigger picture. This is what the cosmos is like without God coming in to bring life. If you'll do me a favor, take a look, if you will. Go over to the book of Habakkuk. It's a small little prophet in the latter part of the Old Testament. Micah, Nahum, Habakkuk, Zephaniah. It's about 4 or 5 prophets from the end of the Old Testament. Habakkuk chapter 3. Maybe somebody who hasn't read yet could begin reading in verse 8. Please. Your name again? Josh. Well, let me make sure everybody's there. Everybody's there. Habakkuk 3:8. Wait, to help you? Yeah? I got it. Is that it? Habakkuk? That's Micah. It's Micah. There you go. There's Habakkuk. Everybody's got Habakkuk? So, Josh, read Habakkuk 3, beginning in verse 8. So, according to this, Josh, God is coming out to do battle, and who's he doing battle against? Just the sea and the rivers. Keep going. Yeah, so here's the deep, right? And what does it do? It lifts its hands on high. I see some of you, lift your hands in praise. What is the deep doing when it raises its hands like that? What's that? Is it praising God? What else? It's like, what do you do if you surrender? Help! This is an expression of I'm defeated. Okay, keep going. Okay, skip on down. Go down to verse 14. This is the single most powerful and repeated enemy of God is the chaotic sea. It's chaos. Well, I mean, just think about it. If you have, let's say, a bucket of seawater, that seawater is contained. But let's suppose you take that bucket, you just turn it upside down in your living room. What happens to the carpet, to the furniture? What happens? It destroys it. Okay, it's contained. That's what God does. It contains. If left to its own, it will be destructive. Turn over, if you will, to Isaiah. Turn over the book of Isaiah. Big book, should not be too difficult to find. Take a look in Isaiah. Turn to chapter. Take a look in chapter 51, please. Maybe somebody who hasn't read yet could begin reading in Isaiah 51:9. That's Orion, right? Okay, so before the sorrow can flee away, what does God do? Dries up the sea. God, do again what you did long ago. And in fact, we're told that it has a name here. This dragon in the sea has a name. What is it? Have you ever heard that one before? You've heard probably Rahab in the book of Joshua. That's spelled actually differently. It's different. But have you ever heard of this creature that God destroyed called Rahab? It's called a dragon there, right? Right? It's called a dragon. Have you ever heard about that? That's another one of the lieutenants, like Satan. There are more of these characters out there. Turn to Isaiah chapter 27, verse 1. What does it say there? Yes, and that's Olivia? Mhm. Whoa, where does this dragon live? So, and what's the name of this? Leviathan? Can you say Leviathan? Leviathan. It, wow, Leviathan. And by the way, a Leviathan pops up a couple times in the Bible. Leviathan lives where? Once again, this is the locus. Okay, this is what every Israelite thought of when they thought of the cosmos opposed to God. Chaos, water, unrestrained, salt water, death. And God has come to make life possible. And it's not an accident that we have the place where Jesus spent most of his adult life. The Sea of Capernaum was on what body of water? The what? The what of Galilee? The Sea of Galilee, did you say? You know, Dallas, how big is the Sea of Galilee? Bigger than Hume Lake. Would you call this a sea? No, this is a lake. It's pretty big. Can you see from one side to the other? That's a lake. I got news for you. That's a lake. What do we call the five big ones in the north of America? We call those the Great Ocean, the Great Seas. What do we call those? The Great Lakes. And you can't see across those. Okay, the Great Lakes. And the Sea of Galilee would get swallowed up. Why do they call the Sea of Galilee Sea of Galilee? Well, it's not an accident that Jesus took up his residence on the shores of what was called the Sea of Galilee. Incidentally, the Sea of Galilee happens to be below sea level. Most people aren't aware of the fact that when you go to the Sea of Galilee, when Jesus walked on the water, he was actually underwater. You think about that. Okay, that's a joke. Okay, so the Sea of Galilee is underwater, 300 feet below sea level. but it's called the Sea of Galilee, even though it's a lake. Jesus chose that as his place. And it's not an accident that the first time the disciples figured out that Jesus was more than a simple man was because of the Sea of Galilee. Turn to the book of Matthew. These guys knew their Bible. They knew what they saw. And in Matthew chapter 8, the disciples and Jesus go out on the lake in the boat, and they're crossing from one side to the other. And maybe somebody who hasn't read yet could read verse 23 in Matthew 8. Did you got and your name? Amber. A great storm on the what? Yeah. See, if this was a great storm arose on the lake, they wouldn't have made a connection. They wouldn't have made a connection. Your Bible says lake? Ah, it is not lake. Keep going. There's a different word for lake, just as in English. Yeah. Keep going. Now, before you read the next verse, I want you to think. Here is this man that these disciples have been following, and they're seasoned disciples. They know how the Sea of Galilee works. You don't mess with it. It'll kill you. And they're telling Jesus, wake up, we got to do something. And this man stands up and he calms the sea. He calms the sea. Nobody but God ever is able to command the sea. You read all the way through the Old Testament. Moses wants to split the sea. He's got to call on God. He's got to raise that rod. He's got to call on God to bring the east wind, split it. And here is a man who stands up and he calms the sea. What's the next verse, Amber? Ambrose. I'm sorry. Sorry. Slip. What? Read that again.
And the mid part will saying, what sort of man is this that even the wind and the sea obey?
That's their first clue. That Jesus is something more. What kind of a man is this that even the winds and the sea obey him? That is the crystallizing factor for the disciples. This begins their road on education. This is God become man. By the way, that's one of the amazing affirmations of the deity of Jesus. And you don't even know it. Nobody does this. And the exciting thing about the whole biblical message is you go from one to the other. You want to talk about Satan and the devil? We can do that. Like I said, he's a minor figure. He is nothing compared to the sea and the dragon that lives in the sea, Leviathan and Rahab. But the exciting thing is that the story of the Bible is the story of good news. And when you get to the end of the Bible, take a look in the book of Revelation. You discover that there's such Revelation chapter, if you will, Revelation chapter 21. Would somebody read for me the very first verse of Revelation 21, verse 1? Such good news. Yes. That's why. Wow. There's no longer any what? There's no longer any sea. I thought, if I'm a deep sea fisherman, okay, and I read this verse, I go, well, I don't want to go there. I want to do some deep sea fishing when I get to heaven. No. What's the point here, Wyatt? What is this saying? God's got rid of what? The sea, and what does that mean? Evil has been dealt with. Evil. Genesis 1 starts out with, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, and the deep was there. It's a mystery. We don't know how it gets there. We don't know the source of this cosmic hostility. But when you get to the last chapters of the Bible, no longer any sea. What Jesus did on the shores of the Sea of Galilee is an anticipation of what is yet to come. And it's a carrying on of God's work that he'd done back in the Old Testament. So when you look at Genesis 1, you want to be able to say, what do I see? Not what am I looking at? And it should surprise you. And it should open up new horizons. When we read the Bible, this is just the first couple verses of Genesis. You're going to be here at Joshua for 9 months. You're going to have a chance to immerse yourself in the Bible and explore all these neat things that a lot of us kind of take for granted. No, There's so much that that we miss. And by the way, I would like to say that I've lived on this planet for many decades. And to my regret, I'm still saying, "Oh, I never saw that before." And I've read the Bible I don't know how many times. And there's always things that I've missed. So the challenge for you is make sure in these 9 months that the Bible, treat it as a strange book. What is it that God is trying to show me that everybody else has missed?